this is a heavy subject matter today. So I do want to put a disclaimer beforehand. Understand, we're talking about suicide. We're talking about self-harm, emotional sufferings, and challenges and trials similar to that aspect. Some parts of this topic may be heavy for you, right? If you're going through certain things, or if you've gone through certain things with a family member or what have you, it also may be triggering. So please be sure to listen at your own pace. If you have to pause, stop, come in and out, feel free to do so as needed, guys. Definitely, if you are in a crisis situation or if you're thinking about ending your life, understand that you are not alone. There is always, always, always help available to you. I want to put out some details of places you can contact if you need to do so. If you're in the U.S., feel free to call or text 988 to reach the Suicide Crisis Lifeline. This is a free resource for you in case you don't know about it. It's confidential, available 24 hours a day, okay? For those of you all who are international, there are also numbers and hotlines available. Go to the website, findahelpline.com to get any assistance or resources that you need. It's organized by country, so you'll have to search in your particular region. Guys, remember that your life is absolutely valuable. Reaching out for help is by no means a vulnerability or weakness or anything like that. It is a courageous act, because in doing so, you are aligning with your destiny and you're walking the path that you were designed to walk as you were put on this earth. A few more greetings and then we will get into it. Crip Blue, fly me out. Don't know what that means. You say you're trying to go live with me. It seems like you're with us. If you mean something else, let me know by that. Greetings, Vaughn. Thank you for joining us. You're saying your brother took his life 25 years ago. So much gratitude. You are very, very welcome. Unfortunately, a lot of people are suffering from these dynamics, both within themselves and then also through family members who have gone through things like this, family and friends. So yes, it is a much needed topic, especially with the rates of suicide and things that are going on, which I'm going to start with. I'm going to talk about suicide and suicidal ideation rates as they stand globally. And of course, we're going to hone into the U.S. and in particular within the African diaspora, right? So according to the WHO, World Health Organization, over 700,000 people commit suicide every year, okay? For each one of those deaths, about 20 people unsuccessfully, fortunately, attempt suicide on an annual basis. Globally, suicide is the third leading cause of death among young people between the ages of 15 and 29. So unfortunately, this phenomenon is happening at a much higher rate among younger generations. And I will get to some of the reasons behind that in a little bit. Over 49,300 people died from suicide in the U.S., in 2023 from suicide. So that's about one death for suicide every 11 minutes, okay? It is among the leading cause of death in the U.S. in 2023. It outnumbered homicides on a 2-to-1 ratio. So it's a very critical and important issue because people suffer silently from this phenomenon. Suicide was the 11th leading cause of death overall in 2023, right here in the U.S., right? In the States, so we're getting into the U.S. data before I was talking about it globally. In the U.S., it's the second leading cause of death between individuals between 10 and 34 years of age, and it was the fourth leading cause of death of individuals between the ages of 35 to 44. Those are U.S. statistics. Males, unfortunately, make up about 80% of suicidal deaths in the U.S., though they only account for, well, I shouldn't say only, but they account for about half of the U.S. population. But their suicide rates are 80%, right? The vast majority, about 5.5% of U.S. adults had serious suicidal thoughts in 2024, right? This, which does not surprise me, the data indicates that about adults who identify as having two or more races, so somebody who is biracial or multiracial, have the highest rates of suicidal thoughts at about 10.7%. Again, it's not surprising, and we'll get into some of the deeper nuances related to that in a little while. Across African and diasporic communities, unfortunately, suicide is often very much so underreported or misclassified due to either religious, legal, or cultural taboos, right? So it's not that it doesn't exist within our community, because it does. You will see, I didn't put this data here because I'm specifically focusing on the African diaspora, but the rates are actually higher among white people according to the information that is available. But of course, we also have to account for the unreported amounts of suicide that happen within our communities globally. So not just here in the U.S., and also the underreporting of it, even when it is amongst us, because there's a lot of trauma and nuances in our healthcare system as well. Research shows that marginalized and displaced communities face a higher risk of suicidal ideation. So even though the rates may not be showing up data-wise as far as African or African diaspora communities actually committing suicide, we do have very high rates of suicidal ideation, which ultimately means people are thinking about it. They are, ruminating over whether they should or should not attempt suicide. This is especially, of course, due to the racism, the historical trauma that we've endured due to racism, cultural disconnection. Our identity has been taken away from us, and that's a major part of why people even experience a lot of these suicidal thoughts and things of this nature. Unfortunately, Black Americans have seen one of the highest or the fastest increase in suicidal rates in recent years. Though we are still below the average, our rates are going up pretty drastically, especially among youth between 10 to 24 years old. It's been about a 37% increase in that particular area. So guys, definitely watch the young ones, talk to them, have conversations, and focus on them. I'm going to go over shortly some of the signs of suicide and things like that. And definitely, I am going to get to the traditional aspects of this conversation, but I had to front load it with data and other information beforehand. Okay. Understand, guys, this discussion is all about understanding what's going on, finding resolutions, reconciliation for this. It's not about judging anybody. It's not about coming down on anybody or criticizing anybody in the least bit. I'm going to take a few comments that I got here. Okay, so you're asking me, I assume you're talking about my head wrap. Is it a turban? If you're saying like a pre-tied turban, no. It is actually a head wrap that I tie up myself. So yes, I'm sorry, I do not mean to be disrespectful. You're not, I didn't take it in a disrespectful way, even if you were. So you're good. Definitely. So again, greetings everybody who is coming in. Now, let's get to looking at some of the causes of suicide, because this is very important in understanding how to prevent it, obviously. So many suicides occur when people face overwhelming life challenges and things of that nature. So a lot of times with relationships, with job loss, with financial hardships or chronic illness. A lot of times people end up taking their lives through those measures. And chronic illness is actually coming up among the ranks even more so than, financial problems or relational problems, because a lot of people are sick, unfortunately, in today's world, and they are suffering tremendously through chronic illnesses, physical illnesses, mental illnesses, and otherwise, unfortunately. Trauma from abuse, violence, neglect. So somebody's going through these things, pay attention to them if they're suffering from chronic abuse, because all of those things lead down the same road. People are normally, they suffer in silence and they don't say anything. And then before you know it, they're no longer here, unfortunately, okay? Because it can create so much long-term trauma. Mental health crises. This is definitely contributing to the growing rates of suicide globally, definitely within our communities. Depression, bipolar disorder, people on the spectrum, unfortunately. Substance abuse is just at an all-time high, right? And all of these different things contribute to a person's inability to regulate their feelings of self-worth and things like that. And oftentimes it leaves people feeling isolated, especially with the mental health suffering, because it's hard for them to connect with other people on a high level, and especially with the race of things like autism and ADHD and neurodivergency and things like that going up in today's world. Social isolation, I just talked about this, lack of emotional support. People are much more vulnerable in today's world, especially with social media, right? It's such an irony. Social media is meant to connect us, but it's actually disconnecting people at high levels, because they're spending a lot of time on social media rather than communicating socially on a one-on-one basis in real life. So this is hurting people a great deal. They're feeling unseen, misunderstood at a very, very high level. And then even so getting into, if people are establishing communication networks and things like that on social media, a lot of times there's bullying and trolling and things like that. It can make people feel even worse about themselves. Economic pressures, poverty, systemic inequalities rooted in, colonial histories and things like that consistently contribute to a person's overall well-being and creates a sense of despair at a very, very high level. Obviously, spiritual disconnectedness, which is related to, unfortunately, self-worth and self-identity among people in the African diaspora to a very, very high extent. So we're disconnected from our ancestors. That's our higher self, our purpose, our destiny. We don't know why we are here. When you don't have a sense of purpose or direction, life is meaningless. So people start to ask, what's the point? Especially when they are dealing with undue suffering on a high level in so many different regards. Okay. So when you lose that sense of cultural knowing, identity, cultural connection, it is much harder to have a connection with life itself on an ongoing basis. So these are some of the many contributors to the phenomenon of suicide itself, and of course to the growing rates of this dynamic globally, right? And there are many, many more, but I wanted to highlight these. Let me take a few more comments and questions. Alafia, Lance, thank you for joining us. You're saying it's a lot of crack smoking going around. Yeah, there's a lot of drug use, unfortunately. What is that? The lean? What do they call it? Is it fentanyl? I get my stuff mixed up. So if somebody knows, like, is it the fentanyl or the lean, or those the same exact things? But I know, like, there is a big crisis with that. There's a big crisis with opioids and so many different drugs. And it's a mental health problem. So it's not even to judge anybody if you or somebody that you know is dealing with these particular dynamics, because substance abuse is absolutely part of a holistic mental health issue, right? It's hard for a person to regulate themselves when it comes to those dynamics. So they often end up just stuck in that mode of dealing with drugs or what have you. Alafia, Lidria, Alafia. You seem very true. Yes, definitely, definitely. So those are, some things that go on, guys, are going on with people. So many people are dealing with things. And I definitely ask you, if you have the wherewithal, pay attention to people and try your best to form those connections, because we are desperately missing that in today's world holistically in our community so much. That's my biggest concern, obviously, is the Black community, the African diaspora. Welcome and greetings to everybody who is joining us on all platforms. I thank you all for showing up. You're saying aside you, promethazine and codeine is lean. Fentanyl is the epidemic. Both are opioids. Thank you for that, right? I forget you were there. Thank you. So I appreciate you coming in with that, because I don't know the difference. I know about them, and I feel any bad for anybody that's dealing with them, but I don't know, like, I don't know a lot about like drug addiction in today's world. Like, when I came from the crack epidemic era, I was born in '78, so that was the big thing when I was coming up. Now they are on all kinds of new stuff. Suicide prevention and warning signs. So, guys, pay attention to people, what they're doing. These are some common signs of people who are in a space of suicidal ideation, and you could possibly help them and save their lives if you're paying attention and you notice these warning signs. So it could be somebody, in your immediate family, somebody at work, or wherever that, you may be able to help if you are aware of what's going on with them. So obviously emotional withdrawal, loss of interest in just daily life overall. And this is on a persistent basis. I think we all kind of get there sometimes, like you're just not interested in, the day-to-day activities. And it's very common in somebody who is experiencing something like PTSD, where they just dealt with a major trauma. They could be suicidal, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are in such cases. But still pay attention to what is going on in people's lives. Persistent sadness or depression, all of these can signal hopelessness. Also, fatalistic speech, right? Somebody always walking around, I don't see the point of living anymore. Everyone would be better off without me, things like that. Pay attention to it. Sometimes, obviously, yes, it's just people trying to get attention, but even in that, it's still significant, because if they're trying to get attention, that means they don't have attention, or they don't feel as though they have attention, which is an early warning trigger in and of itself, right? Sudden changes in mood, appetite, sleep, or appearance can indicate that someone is struggling silently. Pay attention to how they look, especially somebody who is normally really well put together, well dressed, and then all of a sudden they stop taking care of themselves, right? Hair disheveled, not taking care of their personal hygiene, not eating, losing a significant amount of weight over time. All of those things can signal something is going on with someone mentally, and you should pay attention to it if you are around them. Somebody talking openly about that. Somebody, like, some people literally say, I'm going to kill myself, or I want to kill myself, or I want to die, or they just have an unhealthy or unusual obsession with death, more so than they normally would. Some people just are naturally inclined towards death and dying and grief and things like that. And it can be healthy in certain regards, right? But some people are overtly on that end of the spectrum, and you overly, I should say, on the end of the spectrum, you need to pay attention to them because it could indicate that they are having suicidal thoughts or something like that. All right, somebody constantly researching things about suicide, how to kill themselves or something like that. Somebody giving away their valuables, things that they really hold near and dear to them, and they just start, giving it away. You need to question those things. Those are significant red flags when you see these types of things going on with your loved ones. Expressing feelings of they are a burden or something like that to you or to others around them, or just feeling like they are unwanted, right? We got to take responsibility as a community, guys. Check in with people, listen to people. Try not to judge people. Try not to try to listen to people. I think that's a huge thing. People don't listen a lot nowadays. They just want to inject and say, well, it's gonna be okay, or try to smooth things over instead of just taking the time out to truly listen and see what's going on with people. Because early conversations can be a major intervention tool for sure. Greetings, Dennis. Is it Denise? Sorry. Good afternoon. Thank you for your teaching. She's saying, "Oh, you're very, very welcome. Very welcome." So yes, pay attention, guys, to these particular signs or what have you, or what's going on with the people around you. All right, social and cultural layers. Let's look at some things now when it comes to the social aspects of it, especially from the African diaspora. All right, I'm going to inject some of the questions that I got beforehand. So some of you all asked, why is suicide still taboo in African and Black communities? And taboo to talk about it because obviously it should be taboo and that you shouldn't be doing it, right? But it is a very, very taboo subject matter that people don't want to talk about. Suicide is this way, unfortunately, because it challenges those, deep-seated cultural or religious beliefs about strength and endurance, being strong, having a purpose-driven life. And we should definitely look at this from the perspective that we do have a purpose-driven life. All of our traditions, our culture, is embedded in that very notion. Ifa, everything we do in the tradition is about your purpose, about your destiny, right? But unfortunately, there's this overtone in the Black community that you have to be strong, you have to endure, you have to push through, right? Like we're robots, like we don't feel pain. Similar to this recent incident with this Black woman, I don't know the name, that was having a problem in, like, she gave birth and the nurse just sat there and pretty much ignored her and stuff, because there's this trope that we are strong and we can endure and we can take insurmountable pain and just keep going or what have you, right? And so many times in the church background we've been taught, just pray it away, Jesus is going to come and take all of our burdens away. And that's, to me, a huge problem within our community, with us just taking care of our problems holistically, because we've been taught to wait on a savior to just come and take stuff from us and not work through it and deal with it on our own. And we're suffering from post-traumatic slavery syndrome. There's never been dealt with on a psychological level. We were forced to just keep pushing through. Nobody ever stopped and said, let's deal with the trauma that we have experienced collectively as a people group. We were required to just keep going, to learn how to work, learn how to survive, learn how to take care of ourselves, with no time for psychological reconditioning, even sociological. So social, am I saying it right? Sociological, maybe I'm saying the word wrong, but you guys know what I mean. Reconditioning us back into society within our own communities, even so, in a proper way, right? So, we also taught in the Black community, what goes on in this house stays in this house, not to talk about it, not to have sessions with counselors or therapists or people who can help us out in different ways, right? There's also still is especially, unfortunately, a huge stigma attached to mental illness in the Black community, right? Because unfortunately, the numbers are there. We have a huge epidemic of mental health crisis right now in our community, but there's still this stigma attached to discussing mental health problems, right? Fear of judgment, fear of shame, and things like that go on. Um, our culture is built on this notion of we got to be resilient, we got to be strong. The independent Black woman. I'm so happy that that trope has at least diminished to a great degree. I don't hear people talking about it that much, but I know when I was growing up, that was the thing. I'm a strong, independent Black woman type of trope that people always, talked about, women talked about, and it became, our thing. So if you were anything less than strong or independent, you couldn't be vulnerable, especially as a Black woman, even so as a Black man. You can't cry, you got to be strong, you got to be tough, you got to be hard, and all of these types of things. So it creates so many inequities within us from a psychosocial perspective, even so, when it comes to these dynamics. So, our identities has long since been tied to survival, resilience, persistence, perseverance, which we should do those things because we are all of those things. However, it doesn't take into account somebody who is truly suffering and they don't know what to do, because then there's this shame or this stigma attached to them being weak because they feel like they don't have anybody to go and talk to because they can't figure out, what's the purpose and what's the meaning of life and why they should go on. So they usually handle it silently and, end up either consistently dealing with suicidal ideations and or substance abuse and other things that go along with those dynamics, or ending their life, unfortunately. Right? So we got to do better. We got to pay attention to these types of things because people will end up in these particular scenarios if we don't pay attention to what's going on with them. Yes. So, Alafia, Miss Thomas, my dear. Yeah, so trying to make sure I don't have any more comments. I thought it was a new comment. So those are some of the things that, why we are still dealing with it. This whole, we're so strong, we can take anything. What is the impact of colonization, religious conditioning on how suicide is viewed in our community? Right. So, we got this whole concept of, colonization, these foreign religions and doctrines coming in, replacing our native understanding of mental and spiritual health from a moral or a punitive framework, right? So we used to understand it, and we still do in traditional cultures. We understand somebody having suicidal thoughts as a person being in a space of imbalance, out of alignment with their destiny, with their purpose, right? But you come over into Christianity and even so like westernized culture, and now it's reframed as sin, right? Because Christianity is there, it's a sin that can kill yourself, at least in certain communities. It's not in the Bible whatsoever, but that's the interpretation for a lot of people, is that it's a sin to kill yourself or what have you, right? And you're gonna go to hell or something like that, right? And then in Western society, in today's world, it's looked at as just a mental illness. They don't see the holistic aspect of it, especially as it relates to destiny alignment and purpose, in which we do look at it from that perspective. Definitely in Ifa and Yoruba tradition, but also throughout African cultures, we've always seen these dynamics as being part of our purpose. Like, we came here for a reason, and so we're supposed to fulfill that reason. And we do everything that we do in the tradition, in the culture, to help us to achieve our purpose, our destiny, our function in this life. But when you isolate suicidal ideations, any type of mental health or physical health condition for that matter as just one component. You're only treating that and you're not looking at the full scope of what's going on with it, right? So unfortunately, this type of thinking has shifted us into looking at it strictly from a medical perspective. We'll go to the doctor, and the doctor is 9 times out of 10 going to prescribe you to some form of therapy or counseling and probably some type of medication to help you to deal with it, usually just to numb you or what have you, versus looking at it from a holistic perspective. And definitely, if you come to the tradition, it's starting spiritually, right? So we're going to go and do divination to figure out what's going on and what we need to do about it. And you are going to do something to energetically align yourself first with those dynamics in order for you to get a better mindset and keep pushing forward in whatever you're dealing with, right? We've been disconnected from that, our ancestral ways of being, unfortunately. How can reconnecting with one's roots or culture rebuild one's will to live? This is so critical, in my opinion, is that we do reconnect with our roots, right? So when we get back to our roots, to our ancestors, to our culture, we get a sense of belonging, number one, a sense of identity that counteracts the isolation that we deal with. And I think this is especially potent for those of us who live and have to interact in Western society. So that being the US, the UK, other parts of European culture, Australia, these types of places. I'm not talking specifically about the Caribbean here, and I'm not dismissing the Caribbean because, or Africa for that matter. Well, I said the diaspora, but I say this specifically because in American society or in Western worlds, Black people tend to be much more isolated from their culture and from their roots. They don't live in a society that's all Black, whereas in the diaspora, in certain parts of the diaspora, the Caribbean, in Africa, there tends to be all Black communities where you can connect with people on a better way. I'm not saying it's perfect because it's not, but it is a little bit better than what we have to deal with, especially in certain aspects of our society, right? So, but even in that, unfortunately, a lot of times in even Black cultures or Black societies, you're reconnecting, but through a westernized framework still. So that's still detrimental. I'm not negating that you guys have to deal with that as well, because I know what that looks like as well. I lived in Africa, and it's very much so where I live was very much so hung up on Christian belief systems or what have you. Islam was there as well. And so it wasn't okay to talk about your culture. It wasn't okay to reconnect with your ancestral frameworks and things like that. It's still not in most part of the African diaspora. So that's a reality for us, unfortunately, right? But understanding our lineage, our traditions, our purpose, because that's what everything is about within the collective of who we are, it reignites a sense of meaning to life. It reignites that sense of motivation to keep going, even when things are hard and tough. It reignites your sense of self-worth. The whole notion of coming out into a tradition and a culture, and from the door, you understand, this is why I came here, right? And everything that you do thereafter is directed towards their purpose. You don't feel lost. You will experience hardships, right? Some people more than others, depending on their destiny path. But if you know that if you do certain things, right, and you go in that certain direction, you are going to reach wherever you are meant to reach. It is not the same level. It's not the same burden versus you just wandering around out here and trying to figure it out. Like, why did I come to this space? What am I here for? It's got to be more than just the work, the rest of my life. And that's it, right? And that's kind of where people are in the Western world, unfortunately. This is what you're taught. Everything leans towards your occupation, when you come out in the Western world, right? You go to school, the whole educational system in America, in Western, any Western system, is about training you to be a good worker. So everything is about when am I going to, what are you going to do when you grow up, right? Go to college, you get a degree, and then after so long, you do the major milestone things, and then after a certain point in your journey, you start to wonder, well, it can't be that I'm just here for this, just to work, right? Just to be a slave, so to speak. It is slavery still. It's on a different level than what we used to think about, but that can be stifling for somebody. But when you reconnect back to your tradition and you understand your purpose from the door, and you are able to walk through life with that purpose ingrained in you, it is something completely different. So it is very important for us to get back to these systems holistically so that we can understand who we are and understand what we need to do in order to accomplish the reason why we came here. Let's look at some ethical and theological crossroads within this dynamic, right? So we're going to get deeply into Ifa and what the tradition talks about or relates when it in regards to these dynamics. So Ifa teaches us that we do have free will, obviously. You can do whatever you want. You came into this earth with a purpose, but you don't have to fulfill that purpose. It's up to you. You can do whatever you desire. When you're told your taboos and you're given warnings when you get an Ifa reading, or you're told, to do certain things, to modify your behavior in certain ways, when you're told to, initiate or whatever it may be, you have the choice in doing it or not, right? That being said, you are still, here to fulfill a purpose, right? So you must remain in alignment with your Ori in order to do so. Ending your life is not a part of that cosmic contract. It completely negates it, because you didn't come here to end your life. Nobody came here to end their own life. All right. You were given a date to be born. You were given a date to leave the earth. Those are non-negotiable, right? That when you're supposed to come home, you can end it early, right? You can even do things, even like you're not committing suicide, for instance, but you can do things that get you out of alignment with your destined path that cause you to leave the earth early. And so it's not suicide in the sense that you're going to take your own life. It's suicide in the sense that you're deviating from your purpose in that case. But this is not what I'm referring to when I say suicide in that manner, right? Whenever you do take your life according to the tradition, right, that's obviously in a space of imbalance, as we talked about before, because now you've just gotten off track with what you came to this earth to do. That being said, Ifa does emphasize mercy and forgiveness, all right, and obviously elevation. So it's not to say somebody takes their life, they're condemned for all eternity, and they can't ever come back to get it right, because they can't. Obviously, there are certain rites and rituals that we do in order to help our loved ones to elevate, regardless of how they transition, but especially if they transition through something like suicide, because then their spirit is in a different space. Usually they become an earthbound dwelling entity or soul until they can, elevate at a certain level. All right. So we do certain rites and rituals to help that person to heal and to elevate in the afterlife, I'm referring to, so that they can get to where they need to be. Okay, I got a question here. You said they train you to work simply, yet very simple, yet very deep. Yep, that's what they do. That's what the spectacular 321, that's what they do. Unfortunately, you're being trained to work. That's what the entire educational system is about. And so many of us have fallen victim to that, even so to the point where people actually fight to get into elite schools and things like that so that they can be the best worker. But yeah, moving forward. So can a person's destiny include self-inflicted death? So we got to address this already. No, right? So there's so many different paths that you can take on this earth, but Ifa teaches that a self-inflicted death is not something that your higher self chose before you came, and nobody doesn't. Like there's no exception to that reality. Nobody chose to commit suicide before they came here. All right. The act itself contradicts the entire notion that we have a purpose, right? And that we need to learn critical lessons in order to achieve that purpose so that we can evolve. Is suicide always wrong, or does the context matter, such as somebody suffering from terminal illness? Maybe they're in the midst of battle and they decide to kill themselves and take their lives so that the enemy won't do so. So again, no. Life and death are both part of our fulfillment of destiny, right? But intentionally ending one's life is seen as an imbalance, as I've talked about before. And I know this sounds repetitive, but I was trying to get out every position of the questions that I was being asked. Okay, when pain or illness becomes unbearable, right? There's compassion. There's also ways for us to overcome these things. That's what the whole tradition is about. You get a reading, you get an understanding of why you're going through what you're going through, and you correct that through either doing the sacrifices and or taking a kosher herbal remedies, or a kosher being spiritual medicine for individuals who may not be familiar with that. There are herbal remedies. There are so many different things that you can do to achieve balance in your life. And that's what Ifa offers, right? At every turn, any Ifa reading you get, you can get information on how to overcome whatever you are dealing with. So if you have all these mechanisms in place, why would suicide be an option for you at that point? Because you came here to learn certain things. You came here to have specific experiences. If you take your life, you cut those dynamics short and you don't get a chance to fulfill that aspect of yourself. How does Ifa look at suicide differently than Christianity or Islam? So that's this question. So Abrahamic traditions tend to look at suicide as, sinful, moral corruption, something like that. Ifa approaches it as a disconnection from your divine alignment, right? So there's no eternal you're going to burn in hell type of notion when it comes to suicide in the tradition. But instead, we're going to figure out how to fix it if it's at that level, just a suicidal ideation. If it has already occurred, we're going to fix it through rites and rituals to help that person in the afterlife to ascend, to elevate, or what have you, so that their soul is not lingering in a consistent state of just unknowing, a consistent state of purgatory, for lack of a better word, right now, right? So what happens to somebody's soul who ends their life because of unbearable suffering? Again, regardless of the reason that you do it, and there's never a true good reason, either way it goes, but the soul tends to linger on, state of unrest, earthbound spirit, like I talked about before. They can't fully transition into the ancestral realm and be a benefit to the people, their loved ones back here on the earth. They can't be a true benefit there to help them out. So what you have to do is some rites and rituals to help that person to get to the next level. Okay. Usually, they won't become an ancestor immediately, regardless of how it goes. All right. Does suicide erase somebody's good deeds? Was another question that I got. So the answer to that is no. Like whatever you did, good or bad, right? Suicide doesn't take those dynamics away. Okay, you still have to answer for whatever you did when you were on Earth, and if it's good, you still get count. That's still goes as a part of your record as a good deed. But if you commit suicide, you still have to go back and reconcile whatever you left undone. All right. So it still remains a part of your life record, so to speak. So when you come back, you get to benefit from whatever good karma that you did put out, but you still got to finish off those lessons. All right, family grief and the aftermath. So this is for the people, the survivors, right, of suicide, because it always leaves somebody else behind asking questions, wondering why, trying to figure out what to do in the aftermath of that situation, whether it's like what to do from a physical perspective, because now they got to take care of things if the person left behind children or material things that they have to settle and so forth, or just what to do from an emotional space, because then you leave a hole in somebody else and they're left with a whole lot of questions and trying to figure things out. So some people ask about, can you honor your loved ones through ancestral veneration who have committed suicide? You can, right? You should. You should honor them. There are certain ways that you should do it, and I'm going to get to that as well. But it doesn't stop you from honoring your lineage in that way, because they were still part of your lineage and you should honor them. In fact, you should honor them even more so through rites and rituals to help them to elevate so that they can go ahead and ascend, as I've said before. However, I would caution anybody about putting like images or personal belongings of somebody who committed suicide on like an ancestral altar if you work with that. So a lot of the diaspora practices utilize ancestral altars whereby you're going to put pictures, or you may put jewelry or clothing or what have you that belong to a loved one on an altar or a shrine. I would not put those things there until I know that that person is properly elevated. And those are specific rites and rituals that we go through in Ifa to ensure that your family is good. All right. What happens if you're angry with that person? Because as I said before, you know, even though the person is gone, it doesn't erase their legacy. It doesn't erase the connections that you had with them. And obviously it doesn't erase the pain, right? And guilt, even so, of things that are left behind emotionally with the people who you leave behind. So, anger is natural, guys. Anger, sadness, grief, fear, confusion, all of those emotions are very much so natural when you are dealing with somebody who committed suicide, when you're dealing with the aftermath of it, rather not the person themselves, but when you're dealing with the aftermath of that, most people are going to deal with so many different emotions, right? So it's not for you to say, well, I shouldn't be angry or what have you. You need to work through those emotions in an effective way, all right? But it's not going to stop your prayers from being heard. It's not going to stop your offerings or sacrifices towards them from being effective, all right? But try your best to work through it. Talk to your ancestors, tell them what's going on. Ask them to help you to find some type of release. And so that you can move forward and deal with whatever you need to deal with in that particular situation. All right. Seek a space of reconciliation and forgiveness too. Okay. While you're going through whatever emotions that you are going through, deal with it in as much of a mature, respectful way that you can, but don't stay in that energy. Let's look at some existential and philosophical things related to this dynamic. All right. So, I got to ask the question, what's the point of staying alive when everything feels meaningless? And this is a question that many people ask on a regular basis. So, if you ask this question, you're not alone by any means. People feel this way. And more so, I think more often than most people will admit, or the average person even understands that people think about this type of question. So, it happens. I think it happens to everybody here and there, even people who know their purpose. Life can feel empty or meaningless, especially when you go through certain trauma in life where you're dealing with things and you're wondering what is going on or when are you going to overcome, even if you know what is going on, right? Because sometimes you can get a reading and you still know, and you have said this is what's happening, but you still got to go through the process to get to that next level in your journey so that you can overcome whatever hardships or trials that you're dealing with in that space. So that's just common, right? Emptiness in the tradition is seen as a temporary shadow, a temporary space. That's what it's meant to be. It is not permanent. You will nobody will ever stay in that space forever unless they choose not to move forward. Because you can't stay in a bad space if you're not trying to work yourself out of it. Things are not just going to magically manifest for you for the most part. All right. In some situations they can, but my point is, Ifa is also a spiritual system about you working to advance your own self as well. It's not just about you just do this ritual and then voila, everything you ever wanted is going to happen in your life the way you desire it to. It's going to happen according to your destiny, according to your path and your plan. There are definitely things that we can do to mitigate certain aspects of our life so that they are smoother and easier. And that is what we do all the time in the tradition when we do about the sacrifices, take a kosher, the herbal remedies, when we get initiated, when we do the rituals, the ceremonies, and all of these different dynamics, right? But it does not take away pain and suffering. Sometimes you have to endure certain things for a season in order for your destiny, even so, to manifest. All right. So, we do all of these things. And once you start working towards that destiny, that goal, your goal through the rituals, the ceremonies, the sacrifices, reconnection with your community and things like that, meaning begins to return to your life. Okay. So you can find solace, you can find comfort in doing all of the things that we do in the tradition. But, don't feel bad if you are feeling like, what is the point? My life is meaningless. Most people do feel that from time to time. Just don't sit in that space. Do something about it because you have tools available to you to do something about it. Is life supposed to be this painful? Or am I missing something? It's another question that I get. Pain is part of the process with everybody. Again, nobody is exempt from having to go through pain and hardship and trauma at some level. One person's pain and sorrow may be different from another person in context, but it's still the same when it hits that person emotionally, nonetheless. So keep those dynamics in mind. Don't, think that everything is supposed to be easy or soft. I know, in society nowadays, people are like, well, I want to live, the soft life. I'm tired of the hard life, things like that. And yeah, you should want to have a smooth, easy life, right? That's normal. That being said, well, I'll take it back. I'm not saying you should want to have this. Some people will because they're naturally inclined to. Some people want to, tough it out, to fight, to, go through different things so that they can endure and they can resist or what have you, because it's part of their destined path. That being said, it is absolutely normal for people to not want to fight and struggle and stuff and go through hardships all the time. But that is part of everybody's life journey. Pain is just, it's a teacher, right? That's the only way you are going to evolve. If everything is easy and perfect, there's no point for any of us to be here on this earth, right? We're not learning anything. We're not growing if life is always easy and we have no challenges and we have no trouble. And I know some people are like, well, why am I enduring this level of trouble, but this person over here is not? The reality is a lot of it is, some of it is part of your destiny for sure, because some people are just meant to have more hardships and difficulties in certain areas than other people because they have to learn lessons in order to evolve and grow in those areas. Sometimes it's your own self, your behavior, you not doing what you need to do in order to walk in your destiny path. So it really just depends on each individual. Ifa explains our challenges as ways that we refine our character and we strengthen our path towards alignment. Life is not meant to be constant suffering, though, right? Just like it's not supposed to be a constant state of ease and everything is all good. It's also not meant to be a constant space of suffering. And if you find yourself in a constant state of suffering, then you're definitely out of balance. And this is why you need to come back, towards alignment and figure out what you need to do. In the tradition, obviously, that's through Ifa divination. You get a reading to understand what's going on and what do I need to do to get myself back on track. All right. But understand something too, because again, this whole notion of I want to experience this soft life dynamic that we're dealing with in today's society. If you if you want to experience joy, you have to know pain, because otherwise there's no such thing as joy in the absence of sadness or pain, hardship, or what have you. Because then everything is always good, right? It's like, for instance, I'm gonna use Disneyland as an example, because that's where most children, at least when I was growing up, they wanted to go. I don't know where they want to go nowadays, but growing up, every child wanted to go to Disneyland because this was this beautiful, fantastical place that you could go and, just enjoy yourself and imagine all kinds of possibilities or what have you, right? And so if you go to Disneyland, if you got a chance to go, you enjoyed it for that moment. But after so long, even as a child, you wanted to go back home. Why? Because if you stay in that space, if you stay in Disneyland forever, your whole life, it ceases to be Disneyland anymore. The magic is gone from it. The fun is gone from it. If every day is this fantastical, magical, world of existence, then it becomes the norm. So that's why we have, balance in life, what they call in, Chinese culture, yin and yang or what have you. You have to have that in order for you to understand the opposite of that. Just like, light, right? If you don't have darkness, light ceases to be light because everything is always light. And you don't understand any type of contrast from that. That's the world we live in. We live in a world of contrast. You can mitigate some things, as I said before, through working with the tradition and doing the different things that we need to do in order to get our lives back in alignment and things like that. Now, I got a few questions about ancestral, afterlife questions, etc. Okay, so somebody asked, can the ancestors intervene when a person is contemplating suicide? Absolutely, and they usually do intervene. Sometimes, though, the person isn't paying attention to that, whether they're in the tradition or not, because they're so caught up in their own mindset, they're not realizing that their ancestral forces are trying to stop them. They're putting things in their way to stop this from happening, but the person may be just so, obviously they're so far gone at a certain point, they're not noticing these signs. And if they are significantly disconnected from their ancestral forces, they probably don't notice it at all. All right. But when someone feels on the edge, our ancestors whisper to us, right? They redirect us and say, no, you need to come back on the other side because it's not time for you to come home yet, at least not in this particular way. You got to pay attention to it, and you need to listen to your ancestors. Let's see. Aside you are saying, in the words of 50 Cent, sunny days won't be so special if it wasn't for rain. Absolutely. I'm not familiar with 50 Cent saying of that, but the sentiment is 100 on point. If you have no contrast, you never feel anything. You never know the difference between anything. That's the reality of it. Another question, can suicide be a generational curse or ancestral wound repeating itself? 100%, unfortunately. Some families, you will notice that they have a history of suicide, right? Back to back to back. You will see this in a generational bloodline, because that seed has been planted, that energetic frequency is there, and it will repeat itself until it is repaired. And that's what you have to do. You got to heal it. You got to do the work, right? And it looks like ancestral elevation. It looks like educating the bloodline. It looks like doing whatever it takes in order for that not to repeat itself. Because it could be related to mental illness. It could be related to nutritional deficits, believe it or not, because if your mind isn't healthy, nothing else will be. And you get your mind healthy through the proper nutrients and removing toxins and things like that, right? Physical and even so mental toxins from your space, your mind, your body, your spirit, etc., right? Through Ifa divination, that gives us the understanding of what's going on in that bloodline, ancestral elevation work, family and community dialogue, and so many other things. We can stop these repeating behaviors, these repeating wounds, so we can transmute that energy and we don't consistently deal with that in their bloodline. But it happens, and there are quite a few bloodlines that have dealt with suicide on a very frequent basis. Is it possible? Another question I got, is it possible to heal these dynamics? So, is it possible to heal ancestral pain or patterns that lead to suicide or suicidal ideation? Yes, for sure. So, healing suicidal patterns or thoughts happens through the rituals and the ceremonies and the okoshe and all of the other stuff that we use in the tradition that are designed to break generational curses, because that's ultimately what it is. It's a generational pattern, adverse, repetitive pattern that keeps that generation or that bloodline, that family line from achieving its holistic collective destiny. What happens to children who that you miscarry was another question that I got. I didn't quite know exactly where to put it. I didn't want it in its own bucket, so I put it here. So they return to their heavenly mates, their Igby Orun, right? So these are their astral mates. Miscarriages typically happen either because that person wasn't ready to finish off their life here for whatever reason, or it also could be due to their parents, one or both of their parents, Igby Orun, causing them problems, disturbing their parents' lives. Either way it goes, when a child miscarries, when a person miscarries, the child's spirit goes back to their Igbe room, meaning heaven, with their astral mates. And, they got to figure out what's the next course of action when they're coming back to the earth, right? Now, let's look at what role the Orishas play in helping us to reconcile or heal suicidal thoughts and things of that nature so that we don't go down that path, all right? So there are many forces that help out in this. Like I do in every live, we're going to focus in on the ones that are most prevalent here, right? Because pretty much any Orisha you talk about, their force can be very instrumental within this in so many different ways or what have you. So many ways you're going to work with them as well. Obviously, the offerings, the sacrifices, that's the elbow, right? Connecting with their essence through praise and worship, working with them that way. Even so, Ilekis, wearing their Ileki beads, keeps their energy close to you. This is Eshu and Iyami, because I know y'all like to ask who I have on today. I have on both. There's Eshu's and there's Iyami's on this side, okay? Or even so, going through the process of initiation itself, so you can restore balance in these areas. What you need to do is going to be up to your particular circumstance, right? So it's not, when I list these orishas, I'm not telling you to just go and feed, Eshu, Yami, Ogun, or Oshun, because we're going to talk about each of those particular energies in this dynamic. Instead, it may be that you get a reading and you go and you feed one of them. You may feel intuitively led to feed one of them. That's fine as well. If you already have their pot or you work with them closely, there may be a head orisha or something like that for you. Or what else? was about to say. Or it's just, whatever the situation may be, it could be that you connect with them in so many different ways. So I'm not telling you to like just go and feed this particular spirit and everything's going to be okay. The best thing is to get a reading if you're not sure of what to do. Let me take a question real quick. Greetings, it says CEO. Can you suggest a good way to help comfort a child that's just experienced a death of a family member? Okay, so this is a difficult one because every child is different, and you can't say how the child will react. It's a normal part of the process, and so I would normally just say be there as much as possible for the child. Listen to the child. Definitely pay attention to them, what's going on with them, so that they don't involve themselves in hurtful behavior. Try your best to get them out in nature. There is definitely some things that you can do through the tradition if you feel like that needs to be done, like giving the ability sacrifices to help rebalance their energy or what have you. But that is best looked at on a case by case basis because it's really difficult to say when it comes to individuals and especially children. The age of the child is going to play a major role in it, as far as how much they can comprehend and how they're dealing with the family member's death and so forth. So on who the family member was to them, especially like younger children, and it was their caretaker, very, very precarious situation, especially a parent, but a caretaker in general. So it just depends on those dynamics. I hope I answered your question. But let's move forward to looking at the different orishas. So Eshu Iyami, right? You guys knew I was going to say that because I got on there like, but either way it goes, Eshu and Iyami, they stand at the crossroads of decision making and the thresholds of life and death, right? These two are very, very important forces when it comes to even going down that path the way you think, especially talking about issue, decision making, that's a crossroads, right? You're trying to figure out, should you keep going or should you transition over into the next lane because you're tired of being in this space? So issue is going to play a major role in your decision making process at that particular point, and you can work with that issue in order to help you to make better decisions, right? Iyami, the Mother Earth forces, right? They ground you in the terrestrial realm. They rule over this domain. So their energy is going to be pivotal in helping you to realize the difference in that. That's Iyami, that's the womb, right? So that's the coming out and living this whole entire existence or what have you. So both of these forces are pivotal in grounding us in reality and helping us to make those destiny aligned choices in our day-to-day life. Ogun. Love Ogun. That's my hit Orishas everybody probably knows by now. Ogun embodies that divine spark of life. That's the motivation. That's the spark. That's the thing that gets us going. It keeps us going, right? Without that, we have nothing, right? That's the divine initiator. If you come into this life, for a baby, even though the baby to learn to suckle at his mother's breast, the baby to learn how to hold his head up straight, to crawl, to walk, right? To sit up, all of those processes for a baby, that's that divine motivation, that spark that we get from that Ogun energy, that fire, that dynamic that pushes us to the next level. Ogun can also remove obstacles that block out our progress. They block our progress, excuse me. Help us to open new pathways, right? Because it's something that's keeping you blocked, then that may just be the answer for you in a moment. You might feel stuck, like I can't move forward. But that stuckness could simply just be a matter of you getting that obstacle out the way so that you can push forward and everything will feel much better and start to move in your life again. And it could be that you need to, get with Ogun to help you fight those battles or what have you. Oshun. Of course, that's emotional healing. She restores the sweetness, our joy to life. She helps us to enjoy aesthetics and beauty and everything. So, self worth, self love, and all of those different dynamics. So, Oshun is great with that. So, she can help also wash away the pain, the resentment, the hardships, whatever energy that is, especially when it comes to love in any regard, if it's due to a relationship or what have you. Oshun can help with emotional healing in that regards. Okay, so you're asking, I was once told that Odu represents the womb. Is there truth to this? It can be said to represent. Odu is actually an Orisha as well, right? It's considered an Orisha. And it could be, in a sense, considered the womb. You have to understand that each Orisha, like, even though they have their own specific domains of control, they work collaboratively. So it's not exclusively that this Orisha is just in this particular area. So there would be like some truth as far as it being the womb from the perspective of a place of birth. I haven't. Let me do some more research on that, and I'll try to put that somewhere, maybe on YouTube or something, so that I can reconcile that a little bit better for you. Okay, or you can DM me, and I can get that back out to you because I don't want to forget. Um, let's see. Now we're gonna go into some Odus, right? So some of you guys who may want to look into the Odu and do some deeper level studying and get some wisdom and encouragement and inspiration and things like that from there. So Iyeku Meji, it teaches us that even in the shadows, light continues to flow, light continues to shine, guys. This Odu indicates that endings are pathways to new beginnings. It's about one thing is going to end, that's for certain, right? That's what life is all about, a series of endings and new beginnings. That's what we do, even as a baby, right? It goes through that first cycle of life and then it's going to transition. So that, infancy starts to end and it transitions to another way of being. So everything that it learns, then it has to implement that knowledge and it leaves the old ways behind. We do that consistently even throughout our adulthood. It's not as easily recognizable sometimes as you get older because everything seems to mesh together and we start to celebrate um, birthdays or years as milestones rather than actual events that happen in our lives in the Western world, that is, right? But for a baby, we celebrate all of those little milestones. They sit up, they walk, they talk. We celebrate all of those things because we understand that that is part of the cycle of life. One stage has ended, a new stage has begun. Oyeku, excuse me, it's the night before the dawn. It's the darkness that comes before the light shines. All right. Shows that death, grief, despair always embody that seed of rebirth. When one thing ends, something else is going to come anew. So, don't get stuck and drown in whatever it is that's keeping you from moving forward. And that's what happens to a lot of people. They feel like, oh, this relationship is over, or oh, this job is over, or whatever it may be. And they feel like their life has to be over because that part of it has ended, and it doesn't have to be that way. That part ended for a very legitimate reason. The thing you need to do is to figure out, what is the next step? What lessons did you need to learn from it? Did you get those lessons, implement those lessons, and then go to the next stage? All right. So this particular Odu is a lesson in surrendering to the stillness, allowing the darkness to just sit there for a minute and figuring out what you need to do while you're in that darkness without losing hope that light will return, because it will. Okay. Iwori Meji. So this particular Odu calls for patience, for faith, for perseverance during times of uncertainty. It warns us against rushing through life, encourages us to trust divine timing, because that happens to a lot of people. Things are not happening fast enough. I want it now. So because I can't have it now, I'm just going to, end my life because things aren't working out for me the way I want them to work out for me at this particular moment. But Iwari Meji is saying no, trust in that divine timing, understanding that transformation often occurs in the balance, right? Between the known and the unknown. A lot of things just manifest without you expecting them to. But if you're sitting there in a space of anxiety and you're worrying about when is this going to happen, when is this going to happen, it seems like it's never going to happen. Like the expression goes, a watch pot never boils, right? So, excuse me, guys. So like you sitting there, you watching a pot, literally. It seems like it takes forever if you're just sitting there looking at it. But if you put the pot on, you put the water on, and you move away from it and you start to do other things, it seems like it starts to boil in no time, right? So this is kind of the essence of this Odu. Don't be so focused on transformation or change happening that's all you're looking at, instead of continuously living your life. All right. The one who waits with gentle character will see life realign in due course. Understand that. Ogun to Meji. So we're back to Ogun again, right? So Ogun, Ogun embodies the whole essence of what Ogun is, that persistence, that, warlike spirit, fighting through adversity. It speaks to that warrior energy within us, within all of us. All of us have it, some to a greater degree than others, as far as how you tap into it and connect with it. And sometimes even people who don't walk around with the warrior-like mentality, they get that energy when they need it, right? Especially if you're working in the traditionalists. Sometimes you might be a child of Oshun, but you're dealing with a battle and you need Ogun to come and fight for you. And, you give some offerings to Ogun, you start working with his energy, and you get that, vital spark for life. You get that warrior energy inside of you, and you can fight through whatever that situation is. Keeps you moving despite obstacles, despite being tired or what have you, okay? This particular Odu teaches us that battle is both internal, it's external, right? We got to fight within, we got to fight without. Victory begins when you master your fear, your doubt, and just keep moving forward, all right? Ogunda's message is that endurance itself becomes an offering. That becomes the offering, just you enduring. And that through continuous movement, guys, even the hardest path can open up to success. And one last one, Ofunmeji represents illumination, especially after a period of darkness, a period of confusion. All right. You are turning back to divine order and understanding. We all go through it. Everybody. Because you don't ever think you're alone. Everybody goes through a period of confusion. What's happening? What's going on? When are things going to get better? I did everything right, and things are just not moving for me. Yeah, sometimes you got to stay in that balance of confusion, because there are things going on that you don't need to know about at that particular moment, right? Speaks to people who have lost direction, reminding them that wisdom shines brightest after a very, very long season of darkness. That light, right, exists within each of us, just waiting to be recognized, and divine wisdom will eventually dissolve whatever suffering you're going through. So if you want to, look at those, definitely those are some great Odu to go through. This is my last section that I'm about to go through, cover right here, guys. Before I close up, so if you have any lingering questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know in the chat window, and we will try to address them as we go along. So you will be going through them. Okay, great. Yes, these are some great verses to go through, the Odu rather, to go through. Let's see. Reconnecting with your Ori through daily prayer, guys, reflection, gratitude, and just, saying, Ori, guide me. That's your higher self. That's part of you that knows what you chose, right? We bring that information down through Arumula, right? Because he's the Orisha of destiny. He tells us what's going on and what we need to do to align. But Ori is the seat of our destiny. Reconnect with your higher self, because your higher self knows what you agreed to. So you talk to Ori, you strengthen yourself through Ori whenever you're going through something, because Ori is going to realign you with your purpose, redirect you to your purpose. Guys, connect with nature. If you're going through something, anything, even if it's not at the space of suicide, especially if it's not at the space of suicide, but if you're in a space of depression and anxiety, reconnect with nature. You reconnect with nature, you are connecting with the orishas right then and there. Orishas are elements of nature. These are elemental forces, right? The fire, the air, the earth, water, all of those different elements. And we can, when we connect with these elements, we're connecting with the original forces. If you're feeling depressed, one of the best things you can do is go outside in the sunshine, right? If that's available to you. Hopefully it is at that time, unless you live in like Alaska somewhere, but still the sun will come out eventually there. Go outside and connect with the sun, right? That's illumination. That's that old Rumula energy, right? It illuminates us, gives us wisdom. Water, connect with water, right? That's that ocean energy. Even so, emoji, depending on the type of water that you're connecting with, that's emotional renewal. Drink some water, right? It's not even always just going out in water. Drink some water, hydrate yourself. Believe it or not, people suffer a lot of illnesses just by not getting enough water and being hydrated. Okay, fresh air. Air is going to help clear your mind. That's issue energy, right? Move your body. Fire, that vital fire. Ogun at work. Movement. Go exercise. Consume nutrient dense foods, herbs. That's the herb. That's the yummy energy. And so many other forces. I'm just I'm only calling these particular ones out as I speak so that you understand the connection here. Because I think sometimes people disconnect it because we personify the Orishas so much that people actually begin to look at them as like, these glorified images of, black gods and goddesses. These are elemental forces. When we connect with the sun, when we connect with the air, and all of these different elements, we're connecting with the orishas, right? Now, definitely there are times that you're going to have to connect at a higher level through the ebo, the sacrifices and things like that, when you're dealing with serious misalignments or imbalances. But on a day-to-day basis, you can do these things for free, right? You can do these things on your own. You don't need a priest to tell you or to help you to go outside and just deal with nature, to drink some water, all right? Do those things. Those are the things that you should be doing on a day-to-day basis to stay aligned. Create or join supportive spaces as well, guys, right? Rooted in cultural compassion, things like that, where open conversation is welcome. You can talk about your pain, you can talk about guilt, you can talk about hardships without shame. Okay? That's the ABO room force at work when you connect with community, right? So that's that energy going on when you connect with like-minded individuals who you can actually work with. Engage, guys, in rituals, offerings, charitable acts that restore your connection to your ancestors, to your community. Okay? Ancestral forces at play. Um, you're asking, can you tell us Orisha carries the energy of the sun or Romula? As I said that earlier, Romula, illumination. The sun is illumination energy. Seek guidance through Ifa divination, obviously, right? Because this is what Ifa is for. If you're really experiencing some hardship, get a reading, get a divination session. You're feeling lost, so that a woman's wisdom, illumination, that's the sun coming through, right? Can reveal practical spiritual steps, whatever we need to do to get back in alignment. You're very, very welcome, SSC CEO. Remember, guys, we need to connect with these vital forces because that's what they are here for. Is put the TV down, put the phone down, put all of those things down, and connect back with connect with nature, connect with your spiritual team. You're asking, we offer readings at Asanee 44. I don't do them. I know what you mean. Your Ifa divination, absolutely. We offer so many different types of readings. We offer Ifa divinations. I do not do them myself personally. They are performed by Babalawo Ifakunle Adisa, who is based in Nigeria. I think that's just to the website. I'm going to get you guys here we go. This is to Ifa divination. So I just put up the barcode. You can scan that barcode if that's available to you to go to the website and go directly to our Ifa divination services. That's the link I just put up there. I'm going to reiterate again for those who are coming in because this is a very heavy topic. Okay. You can definitely call or text 988 in the US or visit findahelpline.com for international numbers. If you need to talk to somebody immediately, these are free resources. If you're dealing with suicidal ideations rather, or somebody that you know is. All right. Get the help that you need, guys. Understand that no matter how dark things feel, there's always another path. You do not have to go down that road. You're not alone, even though you may think you're alone. Because I know people like, I don't have no friends and family and things like that. You have your spiritual team always, and they are right there, willing, waiting, ready to help you out. Okay? You're saying, do ancestor ascension rituals generally benefit all related ancestors or just one per ancestor? Okay, so you're talking about ancestor elevation. When you do an ancestor elevation ritual, you're doing it to the collective Igungun, which are all of your ancestral forces, if that's what you're asking. You can do a ritual to a specific ancestor, right? Like to the Ori of like your mother, your father, or grandparent, or something like that, if you desire to do so. But an ancestral ritual in the Ifa tradition takes care of all of your ancestors. And you can give specific names for that if you want to. When I do elevation rituals, I normally do say specific names, even though it's to all Igungun, but I have specific ones that I like to mention by name whenever I do the ritual. If that is your question, I think that's what you're asking me. If not, it may be in a different position. If you're saying when you do the ancestral ritual, does it benefit the whole family? If that's the question, the answer to that question is yes. So if you do an ancestor elevation ritual, does it help you? Absolutely, because you're the one that's doing it. But it can also impact other members of your bloodline that are still living here on Earth as well. So I hope I answered it because I was trying to take it in both positions there. Okay. Definitely, guys, if you're seeking any type of transformation, you're ready to explore more about living in alignment with your destiny, Ifa wisdom, visit us, asanee44.com. The next live stream we are going to do in 2 weeks. December the 1st, 2025, and we're going to talk about practicing Ifa in prison. So that's for anybody who may be dealing with this themselves or through a family or friend or something like that who they're helping out and they're trying to get access and information about how to do this in the most effective way as possible, because it's a very nuanced process. So I will be putting out my normal, fillers for the questions, the surveys, and things like that beforehand. Make sure that you respond, and I will see you all again another time. As always, guys, Ashe. Have a very blessed and beautiful day and beyond.